It began with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that feels like a warning. The kind that settles into a room when a lie has finally lost all its hiding places. The cameras were rolling, the tension was thick, and then Tamar Braxton's voice shattered the stillness. Across from her, Toni Braxton barely moved. She sat frozen, trying to hide the flicker of shock behind her eyes. Her jaw tightened, her gaze shifted, and for the first time in years, the polished, graceful sister looked trapped. The world had always seen Toni as the calm one, the composed one, the Braxton queen. But at that moment, the facade slipped, and what appeared wasn't royalty. It was a woman cornered by her own contradictions. This wasn't a simple sibling argument. It was about trust, manipulation, and one moment that broke everything open. It started when Toni allegedly made a suggestion, something she framed as harmless. She encouraged Tamar to bring Ashley on her show. "Let her speak," she supposedly said. Tamar followed through, expecting support. Instead, chaos erupted. Toni denied ever suggesting it. And worse, she allegedly joined the other sisters in sending Tamar a cease and desist. Imagine your own family threatening you for doing exactly what they encouraged. When Tamar tried explaining on camera, the heartbreak was written across her face. She wasn't just angry, she was wounded. She asked, her tone dripping with superiority, as if Tamar was confused or unstable. But this time, viewers noticed the pattern, the subtle gaslighting, the quiet dismissal, the way Toni twisted the narrative with a soft voice and a small smile. That's Toni's strength, quiet control. She doesn't need to raise her voice to cut someone down. She simply denies, deflects, and lets the world label Tamar as the problem. It had been happening for years. Every tear, every outburst, every moment Tamar felt misunderstood traced back to that same dynamic. And when Toni Braxton's stunned expression flashed on screen, even she looked like she couldn't believe Toni's denial. Deep down, they all knew Tamar wasn't lying. This wasn't about one incident. It was years of buried tension finally breaking through. What made it worse was the way Toni reacted. She wasn't just denying, she was mocking. When Tamar spoke about her struggles, her emotions, her fears, Toni smirked. That single expression became the breaking point. Tamar wasn't chasing drama. She was trying to survive in a family that often dismissed her pain. Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Towanda Braxton, facing accusations about using Tamar's card, was allegedly shielded. Toni supposedly knew, yet stayed silent. Imagine being hurt, then blamed for reacting to the hurt. The polished Braxton brand was just that, a brand. Underneath were secrets, resentment, and ego. The same woman fans admired for her grace was now being accused of coldness. What happens when the person you trust becomes the person who breaks you? When loyalty becomes emotional pressure. That night, Tamar reached a limit. She stopped protecting the image that never protected her. Because this wasn't about Ashley or a show, it was about who controlled the narrative. The cameras captured her shaking voice, trembling hands, and the truth she had kept bottled for years. They captured the exact moment Toni realized the world was finally seeing what Tamar had been trying to say all along. Right before the scene cut, there was a glimmer in Toni's eyes, guilt or panic, no one could say, but it was there. When the lights dimmed and the camera stopped, there was no peace. Only aftershocks. A crack lake that doesn't fade when the scene ends. It echoes through a family. Tamar went home that night still shaken, replaying Toni's tone, that smirk, that dismissive stare. The sister who once supported her now looked at her like a nuisance. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation broadcast to the world. When Tamar reached out privately, hoping for understanding, Toni didn't soften. She doubled down, allegedly telling friends Tamar was too emotional. Soon, that narrative spread, shifting the conversation from the original issue to Tamar's feelings. Her vulnerability, something she had openly shared in the past, was now being used against her. Turning someone's pain into a talking point isn't concern. It's cruelty disguised as care. The other sisters remained quiet, caught between loyalty and fear. No one wanted to challenge Toni. the Grammy winner, the family's symbolic leader, the one who always appeared above the chaos. But the cameras showed the truth. She wasn't above it. She was part of it. As Tamar stepped back, she saw how her family had turned her emotions into entertainment, how her pain boosted ratings, how her reactions became memes, while Toni's denials were painted as poise. And for the first time in a long time, the world was watching Toni Braxton, not as the untouchable icon, but as someone whose quiet control was finally cracking. There's a kind of pain that never shows on the outside, the quiet kind that eats away at you from within. That's where Tamar Braxton found herself now. Sitting alone, staring at old family photos, remembering when laughter didn't need microphones and love didn't come with paperwork. Those days were gone, replaced by group chats, alliances, and betrayals whispered behind closed doors. Because the truth stung, Toni Braxton had allegedly joined the rest of the family in sending Tamar that cease and desist. A legal document from her own blood. A message that felt like, "you don't belong to us anymore." For Tamar, that was a wound deeper than any argument ever could be. She took to her podcast, her own space, her own voice. And for the first time, she spoke without filters or fear. Listeners could hear it. The exhaustion, the ache of someone who had carried the problem child label for years. But this time, Tamar wasn't apologizing. She was finally telling her truth. And when she revealed that her home address had been leaked, everything shifted. She spoke about fear, for herself, for her son. The internet went silent. This wasn't gossip anymore. This was a violation. Someone had given out her personal information, and Tamar believed the betrayal came from inside the family. Imagine that, being unsure if the danger was coming from strangers or from the people who shared your last name. Instantly, fans divided. Some defended Toni, insisting she was protecting her image. Others stood firmly with Tamar, praising her for finally speaking up after years of being dismissed. Then came the moment that pushed everything over the edge. A leaked clip surfaced, Toni Braxton laughing, making light of medication, a jab directly connected to Tamar's past struggles. The internet erupted. Hashtags exploded across social media. Because even in the world of drama and reality TV, some lines shouldn't be crossed, and mocking someone's pain is one of them. For Tamar, this wasn't just another embarrassing moment. It was a revelation. She realized that peace wasn't going to come from fixing her family. Peace was going to come from freeing herself from a cycle that had hurt her for years. So she packed up her emotions the same way she packed her bags. Quietly, decisively. The woman who once begged for validation finally understood that sometimes survival means walking away. But she lost something far more valuable: her sister's trust and the public's sympathy. When the truth finally reached the world, not even her poise could shield her. Viewers saw the cracks, the coldness, the pride, and somewhere beneath it all, the guilt. The cameras didn't miss Tamar's final words before she walked off set. Her voice trembled, but her meaning was sharp and steady. Then she turned and left, the sound of her heels echoing down the hallway like a heartbeat fading into darkness. It wasn't just another Braxton fight. It was a transformation. The night Tamar Braxton reclaimed her power. When she stopped being painted as the villain and stepped into the role of the survivor. As for Toni Braxton, her silence couldn't erase what happened. The lie that shattered her sister's heart lingers over her legacy, a shadow that refuses to fade. The Braxton family has survived decades of fame, family tension, reality TV pressure, public breakups, and private heartbreak. But every once in a while, a moment erupts that reminds the world that even the strongest families can fracture. Today's deep dive goes into one of the most complicated chapters in Braxton family history: the lie, the misunderstanding, and the emotional explosion that left Tamar Braxton heartbroken and Toni Braxton under fire. In this documentary-style breakdown, we explore what was said, what was hidden, how the lie spread, and why Tamar took it so personally, and why so many fans say Toni was exposed. *** for protecting someone, or something, far bigger than anyone realized. Long before any drama, the Braxton family was known for discipline, unity, and their shared musical gifts. Toni was the first breakout star, and success came fast, faster than the family could prepare for. Suddenly, Toni wasn't just a sister. She was the breadwinner, the representative, and the name everyone had to protect. This created a family structure where Toni naturally became the unofficial leader, the one whose voice carried the most weight. Tamar, the youngest, always admired Toni, but she also struggled under the shadow that big sisters often cast without even trying. What fans didn't know is that this uneven power dynamic planted the seeds for misunderstandings years later. Tamar wears her emotions openly. She speaks fast, reacts faster, and feels everything at full volume. And while this makes her entertaining and relatable to fans, it also means she reacts strongly to any hint of betrayal. Before the incident that would break Tamar's heart, tension was already growing in the family. Rumors were swirling behind the scenes, disagreements about contracts, loyalty, and decisions that were made without everyone's input. At this point, Toni was dealing with health struggles, business pressure, and high-stakes negotiations. Tamar was focused on her own career revival, while also trying to rebuild her emotional balance after a difficult period of public scrutiny. And in storms, even small misunderstandings can turn into massive explosions. The so-called lie wasn't a dramatic Hollywood scandal. It was something far simpler, yet far more damaging. Different insiders gave slightly different accounts, but the core was the same. Tamar felt like Toni had intentionally kept her out of the loop and then presented the situation publicly as if everyone had agreed. To Toni, this was protection either of the project, the brand, or Tamar herself. But when the truth resurfaced, the internet reacted like Toni had been exposed for misleading her sister. When Tamar realized the truth, she didn't explode outwardly, not immediately. People who know her say that Tamar becomes silent only when she's truly hurt. Tamar reportedly said the issue wasn't about the project or the money. It was about she believed that for Toni, of all people, to withhold something so important meant that Tamar's feelings didn't matter. And for someone who has long felt overlooked within her own family, this hit deep. While fans blasted Toni online, saying she was exposed, Toni herself stayed quiet, which made the situation worse in Tamar's eyes. But behind the scenes, Toni's reasoning was more complicated. Nobody knows who leaked it, a crew member, a friend, or someone in the family, but it was clear enough. For Tamar, the heartbreak wasn't about the situation. It was about feeling unprotected by someone she had always defended. After days of silence, Toni indirectly addressed the issue in an interview. To fans, this was Toni admitting she made a choice she thought was right, even if it hurt her family. The lie, or the protective half-truth, depending on whose side you take, cracked the bond between the sisters. And when the truth finally came out, Tamar didn't just see a mistake. Sources say the sisters eventually had a sit-down. No cameras, no producers, no social media. Voices were raised, but not in anger, in frustration and hurt. And for a family as close as the Braxtons, that distance is noticeable. Sometimes the lies that hurt the most aren't meant to be lies at all. And that's why this situation was so heartbreaking for Tamar. They've survived loss, public pressure, family tension, and industry challenges.